I've personally lost 30 pounds living with Hashimoto's disease and 4 other autoimmune diseases, and now I've coached hundreds of women in doing the same. And so today I'm going to go over exactly what I've learned to get these results. Hormone balance or hormone imbalance directly impacts your autoimmunity. And in fact, disruptions with your hormones can influence not only your risk of developing an autoimmune condition, but your risk of having an autoimmune flare. Meaning that if you want to take control of your health, if you want to get results, if you want to feel your best, you have to look beyond your diagnosis and look at the whole system and focus on healing systems and hormones to get the best results. And now, spoiler alert, I have great news for you. You can absolutely do this by adapting your nutrition, your fitness, and your lifestyle. And I personally have been able to do this living entirely medication-free with my 5 autoimmune diseases. I've even been able to help some women successfully transition off of medication through adapting their nutrition and fitness. So in today's video, I'm going to go over just the first part of how to start addressing your autoimmunity and how to start healing so you can get results through hormone balance. If you're new to my channel, my name is Tasha Stevens. I'm an integrative clinical nutritionist and the CEO and founder of Happy Hormone Health. And I've personally coached thousands of women in reclaiming their health and getting to the root cause of their symptoms through cycle-synced nutrition and fitness. And as I mentioned, I personally live with 5 autoimmune diseases, so I understand the frustration and the impact that it has on your life. So before we get into the juicy details, a bit of a story for you. I was first diagnosed with my very first 3 autoimmune conditions when I was 19. And I got that diagnosis because I was struggling with crazy gastric distress and I was losing weight like crazy, vomiting, you name it. And so at that time I was diagnosed with celiac, colitis, and then psoriasis. And things kind of got, better. I opted to stay off any medication. I adapted everything through nutrition. And then fast forward to the age of 23, it all hit the fan again. I had gone from managing my symptoms, feeling great, to struggling. I literally gained 30 pounds in a single month. I was crippled by anxiety. I couldn't leave my house. I was depressed. I was exhausted 24/7. And then when I finally went to my doctor and said, hey, something's wrong, I don't feel right, I was told that everything was within range. I was told that this was normal for a woman of my age, and I was told to kind of, suck it up. I refused to accept that as an answer. As an integrative clinical nutritionist, I knew that there was more. And through the power of, integrative health, through going more towards that root cause, I was able to get diagnosed with my final autoimmune diseases, which were Hashimoto's and then autoimmune hepatitis. But even through all of this, getting answers, finally getting some resolution, I was told that my only option was to manage through medication. I was told that I was just gonna have to accept all of this as my normal living with so many conditions, and I refused to accept that, and I wanted more. I knew that there was opportunity to support this new nutrition, and I knew that it wasn't just my diagnoses, that there was something more going on. And I know at this point you're like, okay, get to the good part, like tell me the juicy details. And it was because my hormones were disrupted, and through additional research and using my experience, my expertise, I was able to identify that how our hormone levels, right? The hormones that fluctuate in our cycle as a female directly impact our autoimmunity. And if there's hormonal disruption, it can increase the severity of your autoimmunity. It can increase the risk of flares. It can even increase your risk of developing an autoimmune condition. And this is why women are more prone to autoimmunity compared to men. And the relationship between hormones and autoimmunity is bidirectional, meaning that hormone disruption can lead to, as I mentioned, increased risk for flares or developing a disease. But your autoimmune condition can influence hormone production and lead to hormone imbalance or hormone insufficiency. And now autoimmune conditions occur because your body starts to mistakenly attack its own tissues in response to external triggers, right? And typically autoimmune conditions develop as a result of you having a genetic predisposition and then some type of environmental factor flipping that switch on or leading to the expression of that gene. So if you want to start taking control of your health and managing your autoimmunity, then again, we need to go past that diagnosis and we need to look at what's happening at a hormonal and a system level because they all communicate with one another. And now catching these symptoms of hormonal disruption can be very challenging, especially if you're in the midst of a flare, right? But common symptoms of hormone disruption are heavy periods or irregular periods, PMS, bloating, infertility, chronic fatigue, hair loss, thinning nails, thinning hair, as well as struggling with weight gain or inability to lose weight. And now we can't just say, okay, well, it's hormone imbalance, because there are multiple hormones that influence autoimmunity. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how each hormone influences autoimmunity so you can start to take action and support. So that first one is estrogen imbalance in autoimmunity. So let me preface this by saying that estrogen is a badass female hormone. It gives us confidence, it gives us, muscular development, it helps ensure ovulation, it promotes energy. It is amazing. However, too much of anything can be troublesome. And what we see is sometimes when women enter menopause, when estrogen starts to naturally decline, there is an improvement with their symptoms because there is more estrogen balance. But then, of course, there's those symptoms of menopause that can heighten or disrupt your homeostasis. There's also a link between estrogen and thyroid health. So when there's too little estrogen, it can lead to increased attacks on the thyroid and leading to potential overgrowth of goiter, right? But when there's too much estrogen, that can lead to your liver making too much of a substance called thyroid binding globulin, which binds to active thyroid hormone and makes it inactive. And so it can even give symptoms of functional hypothyroidism. This is also a double whammy if you're living with Hashimoto's or Graves', because that's a double attack on your thyroid. So that next common hormone imbalance that influences autoimmunity is cortisol, right? Cortisol is your stress hormone, and it's produced in response to stressors in your life, whether they be emotional or situational or chronic systemic stress like diet, sleep, exercise. And what happens is when there is a lot of stress in your system, your adrenals start to work in overdrive to produce cortisol to meet that need. So in a typical healthy stress response, cortisol actually is known to reduce inflammation. However, if you have chronic systemic, stress that's constant, your body becomes cortisol resistant, which is similar to insulin resistance, meaning it's no longer receptive to the cortisol. As a response, then your body is no longer in an anti-inflammatory process when that stress is high, so it can lead to increases in inflammation as cortisol begins to rise. Over time, your cortisol resistance leads to dysfunction in systems and how systems operate, which increases your susceptibility to autoimmunity. Also, in relation, there is increases in inflammation, which increase your risk of having an autoinflammatory response. Now, that next one is testosterone. Testosterone is a very important both male and female hormone, and it's produced in the ovaries and the adrenals glands, and it helps to promote muscle repair. It helps to boost your sex drive for ovulation. It promotes active ovulation, as well as promotes libido, hair growth, healthy hair growth, as well as weight loss and just energy. Now, testosterone has an strong effect on your immune system because when testosterone is low, it can lead to increased production of T cells. These T cells can increase your risk of developing an autoimmune condition. We often see low testosterone in women as a result of estrogen dominance as well as chronic stress. And if left unchecked, this can lead to huge disruption. In fact, we have seen increases in certain autoimmune conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis and lupus as a result of chronic stress and low DHEA production, which is a precursor for testosterone. And now the balance between testosterone and estrogen is really important, right? So testosterone is broken down to estrogen. And so when testosterone is low in women's bodies, it often means that testosterone is being converted too quickly as a result of chronic stress. So when we start to address stress and we start to focus on improving DHEA levels, we can see improvements in both testosterone as well as lowering inflammatory markers. Now, that final hormone to be mindful of is progesterone. Progesterone is produced by the body after a woman ovulates, and it's your progestation hormone. Its job is to prepare your uterine lining for potential conception and implantation. It helps to slow down digestion as well as energy and puts your body in a relaxing, conserved state to ensure that you have the energy to support that potential conception. Progesterone has a direct impact on your immune system. So when progesterone levels are high, that lowers your body's risk of having an autoinflammatory response or an overactive immune system. compared to when progesterone is lower, we see heightened immune reactivity and heightened inflammatory markers. Now, this can be troublesome if a woman is not ovulating because of stress. It can be troublesome if a woman is postpartum when there is no progesterone because of breastfeeding and lack of ovulation. And also we see this when women are taking hormonal birth control, because hormonal birth control stops ovulation, and without ovulation, there's no progesterone. And this is why it's really common for women to not realize that they have an autoimmune condition until after they've had a baby. And so having a baby in general can trigger certain genes on and off because of the trauma on the body. But then after you have your baby and you're postpartum, you're not ovulating due to increases in prolactin and if you're actively breastfeeding. And so that combination can lead to increased inflammation as well as increased immune reactivity and heighten the prevalence of autoimmune flares as well as any type of autoimmune symptoms. And so it's really, really common that we see women who say, okay, well, I was fine before pregnancy, but now I'm not afterwards. And that's because of the combination of the environmental trigger in the body as well as the hormone disruption heightening your symptoms. Also, women who have irregular cycles or who are on hormonal birth control struggle with autoimmunity because of that low progesterone and it leading to heightened immune reactivity. And so regulating your cycle, making sure that you have the necessary nutrients and reduce stress for regular ovulation is a critical aspect of managing both hormone health as well as autoimmunity. So we've gone over a lot, and this is only part one of a series, but the very first step, if you want to start balancing your hormones, if you want to take control of your autoimmunity, and you want to see some results like weight loss, is you need to balance your hormones. And this is because hormones influence every single aspect of your metabolic health. And as you can see, a big chunk of your autoimmune reactivity as well. And so until you balance your hormones, it is going to be challenging to get any results with traditional diet and exercise programs because they are not designed to support hormonal needs as well as your unique autoimmune needs. Now, to get started in this process, you have a few options. That first option is I recommend you take my free hormone assessment, which is going to help you identify what your symptoms are telling you and give you a completely customized blueprint to start implementing strategies to support your hormonal needs. I have shared the link in the comments below. If you want a little bit more in-depth analysis of what's happening at a biochemical level, you can also get a hormone test. I typically recommend the Everlywell Women's Comprehensive Test because it tests estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, DHEA, as well as a full thyroid panel. I have also linked to that and shared a code for you to save. But I do recommend doing blood work in conjunction with symptom patterns because blood work is only a single point in time, but your symptoms are biochemical immediate feedback, right? So the two together can give you a full picture of what's happening and how to support. Once you have all this information, you need to create a plan that's going to support you. Now, the best way to support your unique needs is through cycle synced nutrition and fitness. And I'm going to dive into exactly how to do these in part 2 of this series. So be sure to like and subscribe so you can stay tuned for when that comes out. If you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to drop them in the comments below or to reach out to me personally.